Hello, everyone. Welcome. Panelists, please get comfortable. We'll be here for 45 minutes. All right. As Joe said, I'm Mariam Farouk. I am the co-founder and COO of a startup called Aggregate Intellect. We are building a collective intelligence platform to help developers make product decisions faster and better. We use a combination of NLP and graph analysis to generate interactive mind maps of your team's collective knowledge. So if you want to learn more, come find me after the talk, or reach out to us at ai.science. Let me put this down a bit too. Oops. Sorry, I shouldn't have put it all the way down. All right. Okay, so I'm very excited to moderate today's panel. The prep call for this panel went by really quickly. I think we're all very passionate about the topic of, how the sum of the parts can be greater than the whole. So we're going to kick things off with just a few notes. Also, I think we can all agree. Sorry, my notes are here. All right, so we have a great panel today. They have all worked in a variety of, academia and industry. Some have worked in both. And I think we can all agree that, regardless of what industry that you are working with, the idea of collective intelligence is very compelling. So there's many ways to define collective intelligence from a psychology perspective, an engineering perspective. We're kind of going to be coming from it from the human-computer interaction side and how AI can help kind of spur innovation all over. I want to quickly share my favorite definition of collective intelligence, which is actually from 1994 from Smith. A group of human beings carrying out a task as if the group itself were a coherent, intelligent organism working with one mind, rather than a collective of independent agents. And of course, rapid advances in technology like AI, there are many more opportunities to progress this forward. We have seen things like citizen science, crowdsourcing things, whether it's passive or active or even more directed. But today, we're going to be talking more generally about how, the challenges of harnessing collective intelligence within the various industries that our panelists are working in. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to everyone and we'll do a quick introduction. Theo, would you like to start?
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Theo Zanos. I'm an associate professor at the Feinstein Institute for Medical Research at Northwell Health and the head of the Neural and Data Science Lab. We are one of the largest healthcare system in New York with 23 different hospitals, more than 700 patient clinics. And my team is developing AI solutions for the frontline workers, our clinicians, our nurses, and eventually trying to improve the care that we provide to our patients.
Hey all, this is Abhishek Cody. I'm a principal business architect at BNY Mellon, the oldest bank, almost 238 years now since founding. And at BNY, I essentially lead a center of excellence team for data science, mainly for a couple of LOBs, clearance and collateral management, and credit services. As part of that, I'm a hands-on data scientist as well, so I strategize some of the best ways to scale up AI and ML solutions across our LOB, across operational teams and business teams. And I'm very glad to be part of such a good cohort of speakers.
Hello? Okay, perfect, it's on. Hi, I'm Cynthia Freeman. I'm a research scientist at Verint. And what makes Verint unique is we have a very easy to use orchestration platform for helping us obtain executable insights with customer data from a variety of channels. So as a research scientist, it's my job to look at all of this data and see if we can improve our products, like with chatbots or with time series and anomaly detection to make it easier for our customers. I'm very excited to be here today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kriti Kohli. I'm a senior manager of data science and machine learning at Shopify. Shopify is one of the largest e-commerce platforms out there, and what my team does is we build out AI ML solutions for our marketing suite. So that includes things like Shopify email or messaging. It allows merchants to directly interact with their buyers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rohan Doctor. It's my 17th year at Goldman Sachs. And, it's quite serendipitous that I'm here on a stage with, collective intelligence expertise, because it really all happened because, one thing led to another, and I closed a really large trade when I was running bank solutions in Asia. And I got the chance to do a victory lap and see the C-suite in New York. And they were said, how did you do that trade and how do we repeat it? And, the honest answer was, it was a little bit of luck. I met the right person at the right time. They mentioned something, someone else mentioned something, and it happened. And they're like, well, how do we repeat that? And I was like, you've got to almost systematize serendipity. And so that's the platform we've built called Louisa within Goldman. And so now I run an AI and a collective intelligence team at Goldman Sachs, which basically makes sure that chance meetings happen more and more often using data rather than just luck.
Hi, my name is Carlos de Oliveira. I have about 27 years work experience on both the investment industry and academia. I work with massive data sets. And currently I work for Bank of New York, which is the largest custodian in the world. I'm the head scientist there. So my research is mainly on macroeconomics, using, as I said, these gigantic data sets as well as the projects that I deliver for the bank.
Awesome. Thank you to our panelists for the intros. Systematizing serendipity is something that I really like and will probably steal. So thank you, Rohan. On this panel, we have healthcare, we have banking, we have some consumer tech. I'm curious, what does collective intelligence mean for you and your industry specifically? Theo, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think when it comes to deploying and using AI tools in healthcare, we essentially use collective intelligence, even if we don't say we do, mostly because these tools, at least in the moment and for the foreseeable future, will not be able to work by themselves. So there is no AI tool right now that's deployed in any type of hospital that will automatically give a treatment to a specific patient or diagnose somebody with a disease without a doctor signing off on it. So inherently, the human in the loop component of collective intelligence is omnipresent in healthcare applications. But beyond that, the idea of integrating data sources from various different places, whether that's imaging, radiology, medical notes, labs and vitals and demographics of patients, or medical or extracted information from their past medical history. All of these lend themselves into a collective intelligence framework, mainly because they're coming from completely different places within the organization, and they need to be integrated in a smart way. And finally, I think collective intelligence is extremely important in healthcare because it will be used by the frontline workers, our clinicians, our doctors, our nurses, and they need to be part of both building these models from the get-go because they will suggest, based on their experience, what is the most important problem to be solved, but also where in their workflow this tool can be deployed, what type of data will it use. And also they could suggest, based on their medical knowledge and other published research in the specific topic, what should we be looking at when we're building these tools, whether we should be looking at specific labs that are relevant. So there is a huge component of collective intelligence when it comes to medical AI that I think right now, because we're not calling it that, it might be lacking a bit of structure. And I think that's where these discussions and in general the field can provide a lot of value.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in an industry, as you said, that the guiding principle is do no harm. Human in the loop will absolutely be critical. But I think the human in the loop component will be important for every collective intelligence platform. Abhishek, what are your thoughts?
BNY is in the financial services industry, right? So expertise is key. Moving regulations are key. So in order to really standardize, scale, and mitigate risk across all our services, front office, back office, and also regulatory compliance, AI has become a central tool to standardize, scale, and apply these in an effective way. I think the easiest example I can give you is fraud detection scenarios. There would be experts who would go through fraudulent transactions, identify the rules or patterns that could be leveraged. And that process still exists, but a layer of AI on top of it, which collects expertise, opinions, facts, and a combination of, and aggregates all these into an actionable process through an AI build is really the power. And really, in a sense of subset of AI, the collective intelligence really dominantly overlaps with the supervised learning use cases. The classification kind of tasks most people do are in just another form of expressing collective intelligence, trying to capture from the experts and ensure that that's democratically spread across our processes in order to leverage it for business processes.
Right. I love that the democratization piece kind of fits in with the human in the loop piece within that. I would love to actually hear Carlos's thoughts after that, because you're both in banking and at BNY.
So yes, I think that collective intelligence on the investment industry is all about matching the very rational mindset of AI, very statistical based mindset of AI, with the very irrational decision-making process from investors. That is a very complicated match. We don't get there in many situations. Just to give you an example, for example, I think I was one of the first Wall Street guys to publish an article stating that the inflation was not transitory. That was back in March this year, when the Federal Reserve was basically saying that inflation was transitory. So what? Can we make a ton of money out of that? And the answer is no, we cannot, because the markets in March, they were not buying the idea that inflation was not transitory. But that's the way I define collective intelligence, and it's a very complicated match for the investment industry.
That's interesting. Why don't we wrap out the regulated industries with you, Rohan?
No, I actually like that thought, because the market is the ultimate collective intelligence in many ways. Yeah, for me, it was collective intelligence really meant, it can mean collective in so many different ways. For me, it was all about human collective intelligence, but enabling that requires the best of man and the best of machine. And so for us, it's like we've got 50,000 people at Goldman Sachs across different divisions, regions, expertise, traders, bankers, legal, etc. And so just being able to say who at the firm can help with anything, and being able to leverage that person's expertise to help with whatever situation comes across either on a news article or a client inquiry or an idea that pops into your head in the shower, like whatever it is. If you can just say, I wonder if someone at my firm knows, I can leverage someone at my firm about, and figure that out. That for us is collective intelligence, and how it started. And we've built a platform that enables that at the firm. And we're spinning out in Q1. And so we'll be able to enable it for many organizations. And so for me, it's really the whole of management committee at Goldman Sachs can't know as much as what, the contacts in a single iPhone are. So that's like, machine can beat us at that. But a 5-year-old has more general intelligence than the best, computers and all out there. So it's really taking the best of both and marrying it.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important for us to, I think we're coming from the human intelligence perspective. Technical intelligence can exist in a variety of sources, whether it's a scientific research paper, a GitHub repository. There might even be conversations on Slack with your colleague collecting the human piece. So, how are organizations currently seeing all of the information out there and creating a unified view of it so they can make better decisions in general? I'd love to hear from the consumer and the insights tech side. Kriti?
Yeah, I think from Shopify's perspective, like one of the main things that we want to do as a company is make commerce better for everyone, right? So that's part of the mission. When you think about the collective intelligence that we're looking at, we have a lot of different scales of merchants. There's small merchants, there's very large merchants, and then they're competing against retailers. So in a way, what we want to do is bring these AI ML technologies, have the collective intelligence across millions of these merchants, and empower them with having access to the same technologies that large retailers have. So if you think about like the small mom and pop shops that are on that have built out their own online business, a lot of them are not going to have access to advanced things like ChatGPT. But what Shopify can do here is taking, here's like what we think is the typical sort of message that you might get from a buyer coming and visiting your storefront. We can take that information and provide merchants with a way of being able to answer questions faster. So we also know that, if they are able to answer questions faster, then they typically lead to higher conversions. Buyers will actually buy something on their website. So we're providing them with this technology that isn't really accessible on a day-to-day basis for these merchants, these small merchants, that retailers have like access to large compute resources, teams of data scientists. So in a way, like we're kind of pooling the information that we are seeing as patterns across small businesses, and that's another way of providing a collective intelligence.
Definitely. And last but not least, Cynthia.
So when I think of collective intelligence, I think of a group of people who come up with a cool idea, and it's way better than if just one person works on it, right? So if you have the AI, you're adding some scaling, but you still need to include that human component, because otherwise the AI might make some not very ethical decisions, or it just gets it all wrong. So Verint's a customer engagement company, and one of the things that we work on is anomaly detection in time series data. So an anomaly in one time series domain, data domain, may not be an anomaly in a different domain. You can't really have just one definition for anomaly, right? So you may just grab some anomaly detection method, you find some research paper and hope that it works, but it doesn't really work. You need to have that human in the loop component where they can kind of look at the anomalies that are predicted and say, you know what, I agree or disagree with you, right? And then the machine takes that data and goes, okay, then I'm going to look for things that are really similar to the instances where people say, yeah, that I actually agree with you. I think that's an anomaly. Otherwise, your machine's just going to be throwing out a bunch of like false positives, and people are going to ignore your system, and you're going to suffer from alarm fatigue. I mean, another idea is another one of our products is Trace. So we have a lot of chatbots out there, right, in the customer space, but sometimes they misinterpret what the customer wants. So there's an intent problem. So if you can just focus with the AI, what kind of intents are problematic, and then give that to humans to tag, that makes everybody happy, right? You got the AI part that helps you scale, but then you got the human component that makes the AI more human. So you need to have that kind of merge between the two. That's what I think of when I think of collective intelligence.
Awesome, thank you. I think it's really interesting that within the variety of industries that we touched, the recurring themes were human in the loop. Any model that is going to have some impact on a consumer or a human or a patient is going to require that humanistic element. And then we also touched on things like the regulatory constraints and compute constraints rather, and also democratization, I think I heard in there as well. Interesting. I would love to go back to Theo. You touched on it before, saying that you don't really have any collective intelligence platforms within healthcare right now, but you mentioned that there's something called learning health systems. I'd love to know a little bit more about that and kind of what is left to be desired within the ideal platform you'd be looking for.
Yeah, the concept of learning health system is, I guess, not very new, but it's not also very widespread. And when we look at the idea of learning health systems, is this circle where you have certain scientists or physicians gain knowledge, usually and mostly from data collected. That knowledge is used through algorithms or other change management processes to actually develop new solutions or new tools. They are used, they are monitored, followed, and then that circle just keeps on going because these tools now produce even more information that can be used in a circular manner. So that to me almost sounds like a rebranding or a kind of like describing a similar concept as collective intelligence. But I think collective intelligence is kind of like an umbrella that kind of extends a lot more and beyond these narrow definitions, because I could think of collective intelligence, especially in the healthcare domain, as a component of it could be a tool that could aggregate all the published, let's say, research and literature in a specific disease and summarize that and provide that as inputs to or information to either a doctor that is treating a patient or to a modeler that wants to create a diagnostic or prognostic model and point them to the right direction, which data you should be looking at, how you should, structure your model so that it's accurate and it's also usable. So there are a lot of things that I by talking and hearing others come to mind on how this collective intelligence could be broadened from the narrow, let's say, scope of like just a learning health system or just another AI tool. And I really believe it will improve the algorithms, but it will also improve the adoption of these algorithms by the stakeholders, which are the doctors. Our clients are the doctors, they're not the patients, because we always have that human in the loop that sees the prediction of the algorithm and says, is this really an anomaly, as you just said, or is it just a false positive, right? So in that case, I think a framework that encompasses all these different possibilities, as far as I know, is not very well known or adopted, but I think it would be useful to develop.
Yeah, it's interesting that it feels like there are a bunch of point solutions that people are kind of creating their own ensemble frameworks to achieve something. But ideally, we'd have some sort of system design at the collective intelligence level to make something actually actionable at the end of it. I feel like I've seen a lot of people using like note-taking apps, Notion or Confluence. You probably use in your company. There are some second brain frameworks out there, like Rome Research or Obsidian, that's more on the personal, individual level rather than the collective level. And then, of course, there are a bunch of knowledge hubs and model hubs like GitHub or Hugging Face. But right, being able to put those all together and give you the knowledge in time when you're looking for it is kind of the next step to be desired. Rohan, I'm curious, because you're coming from this question really from the human intelligence level. Tell me more about Louisa and how they're thinking through that platform.
Yeah, I think your platform and your platform does it very well for the engineering community. Is that right?
Yes.
And so, even at a place like Goldman Sachs, we have, 10,000 client-facing people, 10,000 engineers, and then 20,000, HR, ops, legal, et cetera. So, we've got something. I don't think it's probably as developed as yours, but we'd be interested in thinking about it. But basically, it's, since COVID, many firms have had this battle of, is it all, it was interesting. Shopify is completely remote, right? And even though lots of our colleagues, 20,000, they're just remote. And Goldman Sachs, we've had the opposite. We've had our CEO wanting us, to return to the office. And I personally love meeting people and interacting with people live vis-a-vis Zoom. But it's crazy that in today's day and age, where we have AI summits, one person has to be thirsty on the floor and another person's thirsty, and they come to a water cooler and they have a water cooler conversation, and that's how knowledge is transferred. And that's essentially, I'm kind of laboring the point, but whether you're meeting at a water cooler or in an elevator or on a pitch to a customer, that's where a lot of discussion and innovation and sparks and knowledge transfer happens. And it's great when it does. But, it needs to be more systematic, right? And so what Louisa does is every morning before all 50,000 people wake up, wherever they are, whichever time zone, Louisa's visited every single water cooler at the company and gives you all the gossip that you'd want to know by bumping into a friendly colleague, which is so-and-so left the firm, so-and-so got promoted, so-and-so's now covering IBM, someone's just moved from Hong Kong to Singapore. Whatever the thing is, that's automatically surfaced to each individual on the people they know within the firm. And we know that from the metadata based on who they're Zoom calling with. So suddenly you get a little summary of your people so you don't miss a beat on your people. And that just helps spur essentially collective intelligence, which is people helping people needing people. So yeah, I think that's a nice plug is that, you've been helping me, we met the other day and he's been helping me already with, getting AI talent because he's plugged in the university space. So, just how things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right now we call it networking, and the serendipitous, the connections and insights that come out of that. It's interesting. The people aspect of collective intelligence to me really brings up, how do we involve the different types of stakeholders and how do we really democratize the decision-making process? I'd love to hear from everyone on the panel of how you're thinking through that within your organization now.
Yes, I can start.
Great.
So I was last year in a panel like that inside the MIT, CCL MIT. And a good friend of mine, the guy that really built Siri for Apple, he came to, the stage and he made a statement. Everybody was absolutely silent. He was saying, look, in the NLP area, we completely failed for 3 reasons. Number one, the training process, it's about $10 million every shot. So it's just a few companies can do that. Number 2, we are still committing a lot of mistakes. And number 3, we are very far from replicating the human brain on that domain. So that's all about the collective intelligence. Another example closely related to that I'm working on, it's like understanding inflation. So all investment banks all around the world, they're trying to understand inflation because we were like in a world with no inflation, very low interest rates, and now we completely change gears. Only one training process on one of these experiments that I used to do, it's over $50,000. So it's definitely not democratized. We have a long way to go there. And we need to think about solutions where everybody is involved. The technology is already there, so we can have a massive involvement from all folks on that thing. We have blockchain, we have distributed systems, we have people that want to collaborate, we have everything. But we still need to go something where artificial intelligence cannot go. which is like convincing people that we need to work in teams, in groups, in a massive ecosystem to get there. That's the missing piece.
That's interesting. This is a complete aside, but I heard Hod Libsyn speak once, and he was talking about how anything negative you say to Siri becomes training data for future Siris. So be careful what you say to your devices. And I would love to hear from anyone else talking about the democratization piece.
Yeah, if I may chime in here. So essentially, I think I would like to take a jab at it from a golden circle perspective: the whys, the whats, and hows, right? And for a pragmatic approach, that's been super helpful. Like, why do you really want to create a collective intelligence system? I think the answer is pretty simple. The answer is, why do we have Google and why do we have Netflix, right? You're leveraging somebody else's recommendations, somebody else's behavior to benefit you, whatever the task be. So from that perspective, if we go into the what's of it, is really the key aspects of it is making it playful and making it attractive, right? So the user face at Google, user interface of Netflix is seamless. And how many of our systems which are collecting intelligence, how many people can really interact with these models, right? It's predominantly the developer community. And there is a specific skill set, be it Python or be it SQL or a bunch of other programming languages, that is enabling these people to interact with these collective systems. So human-machine interfacing is really a key piece of the puzzle here in the kinematics of this process. If you make it a super easy experience for me, I'll go and do it. But with that, I want to mitigate my risk. I don't want to go get a very risky answer and then execute it to realize it's not something I really want to do it. So I think it's a balance of really creating an easy user experience while mitigating risk. And I think at BNY, we call augmented intelligence before artificial intelligence, because augmented means you combine the human machine and all the XYZ participants' weightage to determine what your final outcome is. So I really believe it's going to be a combination of how simple the tools are with the combination of how risk-friendly your outcomes are. Because I think the easiest example I can tell you is a regulation one. If there's a new regulation in EU that needs to be applied to 20 different products, obviously everybody wants an easy way to interact with it. Otherwise, you're really creating a choke point between the expertise group that knows it, right? But you don't want a scenario where a decision is being put out or a result on Google is coming out that's dangerous to the process you're doing. So it's really an art today, I would say. And I would really say the power is coming from designers more than the developer community here, designing the right kind of projects, designing the right kind of interactive systems that enable a sustainable growth. Because, I mean, if you've put out ML projects out there, you get a lot of momentum, you got a lot of acceleration in the early stage of it, but how long is it sustaining? So that's where the designers become the key players, and the power has to really shift from some of the development community to the product community and the consumer community, because that will really transform these systems into more glamorous systems. I'm sure Netflix is not the most glamorous systems once you go into the microservices they have, right? So I really believe that's the persona transformation that can change the way we approach collective learning and how it really gets democratized. It has to be sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. Balancing the UX side with the trust element for the new type of user is going to be important. Cynthia?
Yeah, kind of following up on what you were talking about. You said that the designer really plays a big role to make this stuff accessible. And I think that the developers and researchers need to step up a bit too. So for example, one of the projects I'm working on is there are so many anomaly detection methods out there, tons and tons, and every year you get more. Like, how do you make your choice? If you are someone who doesn't do research in this space and you're not a scientist, but you want to use some of this for your data, you're overwhelmed, you're intimidated, like you don't even want to play with this stuff. So one of the projects I am assigned is to find out, based off the data that you give me, how do I choose the right anomaly detection method for you? So I basically take that worry away from you now people are more inclined to use this stuff. That's what we should be working on. We should be working on making this AI, this cool AI stuff that you find in research papers and conferences more accessible to people, because otherwise you do all this research, it's not being used. What's the point, right? I mean, cool, you get it on your resume, but if you're a research scientist, but if no one's using it, so just kind of following up on what you were saying.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, having a system that takes into account the constraints before you do all the research and run into the dead end
Exactly.
would be key. Kriti?
Yeah, I think adding to Cynthia's point, that's very much how my team likes to think about what we're doing as well. Is that it's not even just the AI ML components, but even simple things like just having insights, right? Like just taking regular statistical insights. How many people are going to go and download their data and then like put it into Excel and then try and track like where should I be spending more money in terms of my marketing spend? That's not really, they're busy doing other things. They're busy building their own business. They're entrepreneurs. So what we can do is just by democratizing not just the AI ML component, but the data availability and the insights that you can generate from that data, just that by itself is a huge plus. So, you can make better decisions based off of, hey, just statistical, simple like averages, moving trends, where am I going to optimize for my next decision? And that's something that we can provide in addition to, like you said, like the algorithms that, again, like if I had compute resources, I could build out the best chatbot, but probably as a small entrepreneur, I don't have those kind of resources. I could build out marketing emails and spend my entire life wordsmithing, like this word will like get me an optimized response from a buyer. And that's kind of one of the things that my team really tries to focus on, is like taking that and abstracting that away from merchants so that they don't have to think about these things that are not their core job. They can worry about building their business. They can worry about other things. We'll take care of like generating the text for the perfect marketing email. We can worry about generating your chatbot for the perfect response. Somebody's asking, what's the shipping time? We'll provide that without a human having to step in and spend time on that, when they can be spending time on higher level things like building out their business.
Interesting. And I feel like people nowadays can use things like GPT chat for creating the perfect email. But I love your idea of, obviously the end goal is to have a user-friendly system that non-developers can interact with. But even what we can do now is just being more transparent with some of the insights we're providing. That's great. Theo or Rohan?
Yeah, I think in healthcare, the democratization is key, but it's also something that needs to be done in a very careful manner. The risks in a model that doesn't work well is not that you're going to buy the wrong thing or that you're going to watch a movie that you actually don't like, but you might harm a patient. So having tools that are available to physicians is key, of course, for them to use them. And making it available to clinicians that might not have access to a team like ours within Northwell Health, right? So a small hospital somewhere in rural US or somewhere else in the world. The issue there is that these models, first of all, are not great at in their transportability. Because they're built on local, mainly data, they will work well for New York, but they might not work well for Africa or China or Europe. And there's always that need of either retraining or recalibration or making sure that you're addressing, let's say, the local differences, both in terms of populations, but also in the way that healthcare is delivered. But it is important to provide these tools, and more importantly, to really educate the clinicians both the capabilities and also the things that they should watch out when they're trying to use such tools. So I guess collective intelligence there is key, and it might be better than the usual sources of information that they're getting. We saw this this example early on in COVID, where our frontline workers were scrambling to find any way of treating these patients, and they were going to Twitter and they were looking for tweets from their German counterparts, and they were taking information from like a random doctor somewhere in Germany that were saying that, oh, you should look for this specific lab because that's going to be key. If like that's over 10, your patient's going to die. And we started getting these information from our clinicians on we should be looking at this. So we ran the numbers in our population. It just wasn't true. So collective intelligence, when done right, can address all these different issues. But again, the framework needs to be there to make sure that when we're democratizing our models, we do all the checks on the fact that they are well validated, they're transportable, and they also maintain their performance throughout drifts that can happen during time. So
definitely, yeah, having a good idea about the parameters before you decide to retrain it on your own population data. Rohan?
Yeah, I was just going to say, building on what Abhishek was saying about, Netflix being, seamless, and Cynthia, you were talking about, without people using it, what's the point? And more importantly, without people using it, you don't get enough data. So it's like a death spiral as opposed to a virtuous one. And actually, you were saying how, so people can spend their time doing other things, i.e. watch Netflix. But anyway, the point is, when we built this collective intelligence platform at Goldman, where you could say, hey, who at the firm can help with inflation swaps in France or farm financing in Australia, or whatever it is, we built it, and then we, build it and they will come, they say, right? So we built it, and, they came. I mean, it started with 500 searches a day, went up to 1,200 searches a day, but it wasn't quite what we thought. We thought there would be way more. And then we came up with some other ideas. We said, look, we've got a map of what and who everyone at the firm knows. So why don't we read 1 million articles a week from 250 global newspapers, which will take any human a long time. So every morning we read, every week we read that, and then we send information to the right people at the right time. And all of a sudden, our usage just started just rocketing, because now all of a sudden, every person comes into work, they get an email from Louisa saying, hey, you cover BlackRock, Apollo, Blackstone. So you get headlines on what's happening with them in the world. And if you click on it, you see, oh, Blackstone's entering semiconductors in Taiwan. So you know about Blackstone, but you don't know anything about Taiwan or semiconductors. But there's 6 people at your firm that do. So all of a sudden, it became a cross-selling machine. And, it's every CEO, every business, collective intelligence is cross-selling, like coming up with each other's ideas and, selling it and upselling and cross-selling. And so all of a sudden, we had, 12,500 people a day, like 12x, coming. And we've closed several multi-million-dollar trades as a result of just connecting the right person at the right time because of this systematic cross-selling machine. And so that's just an example of you've almost got it down. You just need a few more iterations of the Rubik's Cube or whatever, and then it's there. And so yeah, that was one of our experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I think the just-in-time knowledge makes a lot of sense to really harness the collective intelligence and make it actionable, as we were talking about before. I think that brings us to the end of the panel. Sorry we didn't have time for questions. If you do have questions, come follow up with us and ask it after the fact. But thank you so much to our panelists today, Theo, Abhishek, Cynthia, Kriti, Rohan, and Carlos. Thank you all today.